don't know the power of
The spice,
What is it doing to me?
the spice expands consciousness.
What's up, everybody? This is the Hedge Mage, and welcome back to another video and another episode of Spice of the Week, where we take a look at some of the most off-the-wall and interesting decks currently being played in the Pauper format. So today I have selected for you 3 deck lists that were played in paper at recent tournaments. As always, guys, if you enjoy the content that I create, if you could leave a like on this video and subscribe to the channel, I would greatly appreciate the support. And with that said, let's get into it. And the first deck that we'll be taking a look at is Jund Control deck by Tommaso Kuliki. I am probably mispronouncing that last name. That was my best shot. Anyhow, let's take a look at what they brought for Jund Control. Always love to see a Jund deck in the format, one of a personal favorite color combinations of mine. All right, so let's see what they brought in with their creatures. They brought 12 creatures. We got 3 copies of Avenging Hunter, so solid green creature here, and 2 copies of Crimson Fleet Commodore, 2 copies of Crypt Rats, 3 Guildsworn Prowlers. So you don't see this very often. This card's pretty interesting. You can really draw, it lets you draw an extra card with things like Deadly Dispute and other similar cards. And then we also got 2 Thorn of the Black Rose, so a lot of grindy cards here. We have both Initiative and a bunch of Monarch here. So that is pretty cool. Love to see it. All right, so in their sorceries, they brought in 3 Brave the Wilds. Now, this is a card that got printed in the most recent Eldraine set, but I haven't really seen a lot of people running this card. I know there was a lot of speculation on how good this card would be when it first got spoiled, but then no one really seemed to play with it, which I always thought was kind of interesting. Um, but yeah, this seems like a pretty solid card. You can make an indestructible land a 3/3. Also give it haste, but not like that is gonna really matter with your tapped lands, which the indestructible artifact lands. They're all tapped lands, so it's not really gonna matter too much. But you can also search your library for a land card. So this also tutors a land, and you only get to make the land a creature if you bargained this card, so you'll have to sacrifice an artifact, enchantment, or token as you cast this spell. So bargain is like an interesting ability. I'm not really sure if I like it, as it is little too RNG for me, but still do love it, or love this card, and excited to see this in a deck. And then we also got 4 copies of Cleansing Wildfire. So we're going to assume here that they're definitely running indestructible artifact lands, as this is a great card to, one, get more lands on to the battlefield. Also draws you a card, so a great 2 mana sorcery here. And then in their instant pile, we got 12 instants. They got 2 copies of Cast Down, 4 Deadly Dispute, which is a pretty great card for them. Definitely in a 3-color deck. The treasure is really going to help fix a lot of their mana, as well as, you can sacrifice a Guildsworn Prowler to it, draw an extra card. So it's 2 mana there to draw 3 cards and create a treasure token. So that's pretty good. And then there's probably a lot of lands here too that you'll be able to sacrifice. And then we got 4 copies of a Galvanic Blast, a great 1 mana removal spell. Also can go face, so you can use this to wipe out your opponent late game. Then we got 2 copies of Terminate, another great 2 mana removal spell. Surprised they're just not running 4 copies of Cast Down. I don't really. This might be a pet card for the builder here, as I'm not really sure why you would want to run this over just 4 copies of Cast Down. I don't know exactly what creature that has regenerate right now that you're trying to work around. I don't generally see much of that being played, even in casual brews. So I don't really feel like Terminate does a bunch. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. If you know of any card that does have Regenerate that you see being played a lot, definitely let me know in the comment section. I would be curious to know why you might want to run Terminate over just 4 cast downs, as you also have the generic mana and cast down, which seems pretty relevant in a 3 color deck over having to have both black and red. Still a really cool card. All right, and then their artifact pile, we got 9 artifacts. We got 2 copies of Blood Fountain. Also creates another artifact which you can use to sacrifice with the bargain from Brave the Wilds or with Deadly Dispute, or just use it to discard a card and draw a card if you are flooding out with lands and need to find an answer to whatever is going on in the battlefield. And then we got 4 copies of Ichor Wellspring, another great thing to sack with either Brave the Wilds or Deadly Dispute. And then we also got 3 copies of Tithing Blade. And this card is pretty crazy. I mean, I've just been seeing this card everywhere. This card is so good. It has so much versatility. It's an edict effect. It can be sacrificed with Deadly Dispute. It's an artifact. You can also craft it with a creature if you need to transform it to its other side so that you can start pinging your opponent each upkeep, which can really help you out a lot in certain situations. So yeah, this card is so, so good. Uh, been seeing it in so many different decks lately. All right, and in their lands, they are on a 20 land build. So we got 2 copies of Dark Moss Bridge, 4 Drossforge Bridge, 1 Forest, 1 Great Furnace, 2 Mountains, 4 Slackwoods Bridge, 3 Swamp, and 3 Vault of Whispers. So they are running a ton of artifact lands here, which they're definitely going to need them, especially when they got Galvanic Blast. You want to make sure you get up to your, what's it, 3 artifacts for Metalcraft? Yeah, so you need 3 or more artifacts for Metalcraft, and then you also, you're running Deadly Dispute, so they can be sacrificed with that to help you draw some cards if you need to. Also, with Cleansing Wildfire, having, let's see, they have 10 indestructible artifact lands that can just really makes Wildfire a really good card. All right, and in their sideboard, they got 2 copies of Breath Weapon, which is a great sweeper in the format. It really hits a lot of things. It's also instant speed, which I think is very relevant with just how good Kuldotha is. I cannot reinforce that enough. It's like you want to be running instant speed sweepers against them. The sorcery ones are, in my opinion, just not cutting it right now, especially after you've taken, 8 to 10 damage to the face. It's really hard to walk away from that. And then we got 3 copies of D-Glamour, so really good against the all that glitters piles. Uh, this can do so much, and there's so many different lines of play with it. It's just a really good card. And 3 copies of Duress, most likely for the control or tempo matchups. And 2 copies of Nihil Spellbomb, another great card. 3 red elemental blasts, and then we got 2 copies of Weather the Storm, as it's just one of the best green cards in the format. And that's the Jund pile, so a nice mid-range pile here. Basically it's Jund Wildfires. So that is a pretty cool. Really love to see Jund decks making appearances anywhere in the format. Next up, we have a Rogue deck by Lenuma Atsushi. Let's see what that exactly means by Rogue deck. It's not really giving us a whole lot to go on. Basically, all the decks that we cover on these segments, these weekly segments, are pretty much all Rogue decks. Sometimes we cover some random meta deck that you don't see very much, but yeah, a lot of times it's rogue lists. So let's see what's going on here. So we got 16 creatures. We got 4 copies of Ethereum Sculptor. So this reduces the cost of artifacts. Then we have 4 copies of Kenku Artificer. Not a card you've been seeing a lot lately, but it's a pretty good card. It makes your artifact lands um, Or is it just lands? Oh, no, it's just non-creature artifacts. So it can make any artifact. Often you target your artifact lands as, the indestructible lands take the most benefit out of this card. And you make them 3/3 flyers. So that is pretty cool. And then we got 4 copies of Miran Spy. I see what's going on. Looks like we have a little Helix combo deck is my assumption here. And then 4 copies of Steelfin Whale. This also has affinity for artifacts, so if all goes as planned, you'll be casting this for 1 blue mana. Alright, in their instant pile, we got 4 copies of Banishing Neck and 4 copies of Retraction Helix. So yes, this is a combo deck. So what they are going to be trying to do is basically uh, go infinite with their Miran Spies and their Retraction Helixes, which is oh man, it's basically they can hopefully one-shot their opponent, and we'll take a look at their artifacts and you'll basically understand why. And then we got 4 copies of Candy Trail. So this card can lets them dig and can also draw them some life in a pitch as well as giving them a card. So this is a very useful new artifact that has come out, and it's only 1 mana, so it is a really good. Then we also have 4 copies of Golden Foundry. So they can basically once they get their combo off, they can just make as many 3/3 colorless golems tokens as they want. Uh, so they can basically either bounce Scale of Chisgoria or Tooth of Chisgoria, creating basically an infinite loop where they just continue. As long as they have enough artifacts, they can cast these either the Scale or the Tooth for free, bouncing it with Retraction Helix or Banishing Neck, and things with Miran Spy and Steelfin Whale, they just keep untapping, so you can just do it over and over and over again and make a ton of 3/3 golems. Or if you have a flying creature with Kenku from Kenku Artificer, with the Tooth of Chisgoria, you can just get infinite power and then hopefully just go swing with that flying creature and kill your opponent that way. So there's a couple different lines here of how you can go. You can either go wide with 1 million golems or just one-shot them with a flyer. So that is pretty cool. Honestly surprised we're not seeing Ornithopter here. Uh, as that just seems like a really good card for the deck as well, as it's already a 0/2 flyer. But anyhow, let's see what they got in their mana base. So in the mana base, we got 12 islands, 4 Razor Tide Bridges, and 4 Seat of the Synod. So I'm surprised there's no Darksteel Citadels, as that's just another artifact that they could run in this deck and basically increase their affinity count. I guess they want to make sure they have the blue mana though, so that makes sense. Over here in the sideboard, we got 2 copies of Crimson Acolyte. So this is a pretty good sideboard card against the red decks. So they're only running 1 white source in the deck, so I'm wondering how often. I mean, if as long as you get one of those lands, you're probably going to be okay. But Dust to Dust will really upset that plan, as well as other cards in the format, Cast in the Fire, etc. Then we have Devout Harpist for 1 white. And this can they can basically bring this in against the glitters piles. They can just by tapping this, they can destroy enchantments. So and they can do that more than once. So that is a pretty interesting sideboard card, one I haven't really seen before. And we also have 4 copies of Energy Refractor. I guess they can bring this in to help fix their mana if they're bringing in a bunch of white cards, as they only have 1 land that creates white mana and no other ways to filter mana within the main deck, so Energy Refractor is probably something that comes in with that. And then we got 1 copy of Hydroblast, 4 copies of Recommission. I guess you would want to bring this in against more of the mid-range and control decks, as they do run a ton of removal. So Recommission can be good when being faced with that. And then 2 copies of Relic of Progenitus to help fight against all the decks playing out of the graveyard. So pretty interesting list here. I've always been kind of attracted to the Banishing Neck Retraction Helix combo decks. Have not really found a way to really make it work, as it does seem rather inconsistent, but I do really appreciate anyone with the absolute guts to try and pull it off, as it does seem very satisfying when you do. So yeah, really excited to see someone playing this off. Haven't really seen people messing around with Ethereum Sculptor before, but I guess that is really going to help make sure that either your scales or your tooths are being played for 0 mana. So pretty fun list. And the final deck that we are taking a look at is Familiar Combo Deck by Inaba Kazuyoshi. So let's take a look on what that means. We got red mana, so it is not our usual familiars list. This looks like it's in the Grixis colors, so we got a Grixis familiars deck. So in their creatures, they brought 14 creatures. We got 1 copy of Ardent Elementalist. So they're running this instead of the Archaeomancer, which is what you usually see in Familiars lists. But here we got Ardent Elementalist. And we also got 4 copies of Augur of Bolus. Really, really good card. 1 copy of Azure Fleet Admiral. Nice Monarch card here. Also, if you get the Monarch taken away from you, it's very easy to take it back with this card, as this card will then be uh, unblockable. And we got 3 copies of Muldrifter, 1 copy of Marine Mystic, and 4 copies of Nightscape Familiar. Now, interesting part about Nightscape Familiar is it does have a regeneration ability, which is pretty wild. That one thing that's happened to me when I played Azorius Familiars is a lot of times I just can't keep up with the amount of removal. Um, and I just get my Sunscape familiars destroyed. This thing, you can just regenerate your familiars if you're thinking you're gonna be facing lots of targeted removal. So that is pretty cool. All right, so let's take a look at what they brought in the sorceries. They got 4 copies of Cleansing Wildfire. Wow, another Wildfire deck, so that's pretty neat. We also got 3 copies of Lorien Revealed, just an amazing card here. Helps, make sure you make your land drops, as well as you can use it to draw cards in the mid to late game. So that is fun. All right, in their instant pile, we got 3 copies of Brainstorm, which is very solid card. 1 breath weapon in the main board. So I think it looks like they're going for more of a grindy control take on the familiars archetype. And we also got 3 copies of Cast Down, 1 cast into the fire. Well, that's interesting. 1 copy of Counterspell, 1 ghostly flicker, 1 keep safe, 2 copies of Lightning Bolt, 2 copies of Lose Focus, 2 not dead after all, and 1 soul manipulation. Now, not dead after all is not something I've really seen much of. This is one of the newer scam cards that came into the format. Don't often see a lot of scam cards, but I guess not dead after all can be really great with your Mull Drifters, or maybe even an Augur of Bolus if you decide you want to block with it against a creature that either has Death Touch or Power 3 or greater. Can not dead after all and get some extra triggers out of those cards, or evoke a Mull Drifter and then play that. So that is pretty good. I yeah, I love seeing some scam cards in the format, or just scam cards being played in the format. So pretty cool there. And then we also got 1 copy of Tithing Blade. So like I've been saying, this card pops up pretty much everywhere. It's just that good. All right, and in their mana bases are on a 20 land build. We got 1 copy of Ash Barrens, 1 Bojuka Bog, 4 copies of Dross Forge Bridge, 6 Island, 2 Mountains, 4 Silver Bluff Bridge, and 2 copies of Swamp. So they're running, I think, the minimum amount of bridges you want if you are running Cleansing Wildfire. So that is pretty nice. So another Bridges deck. Okay. And in their sideboard, they got one more copy of Azure Fleet Admiral, 3 Blue Elemental Blast, 2 Breath Weapon, 3 Cast in the Fire. So obviously bringing this in against affinity decks, as it's basically the best answer, or the best, in my opinion, it's the best card in red that can answer affinity, as it has so much versatility with both of the modes. Are pretty good against lots of different types of decks. All right, and then we got 2 copies of Crypt Insurgent and 1 copy of Negate, 2 Pyroblast, and 1 copy of Relic of Progenitus. Always strange to see relics in a familiar's build, as they rely so heavily on the graveyard as well. And this takes away your own graveyard, but I guess that's why you don't see more of them. But they definitely want to be able to deal with not only the dredge decks, but also a lot of the terror decks, as they can get very out of hand, and sometimes you just run out of removal or interaction against those decks. So I guess it is necessary sometimes to bring in a relic, but that's the list. So a lot of interesting stuff going on with this deck. I mean, obviously the scam card is pretty cool, especially since they don't have things like ephemerate that they can use to get more triggers out of their Mole Drifter, or, Augurs of Bolas. Though most affinity decks aren't really running Augur of Bolas. I've seen what's it? Seagate Oracle, I believe, that gets run a little bit. But yeah, very interesting deck. Love that they're just going the wildfire route, and just to get more card draw, and as well as a ramping, because making sure you're getting all your land drops and familiars is very, very necessary. Surprised they're only running 1 elementalist though, so, and also no way to tutor it, but I don't think there's a tutor for shamans. There is one for wizards, which is, I think, one of the big reasons why you want to run archaeomancers. But this also gets the cost reduction with the Nightscape Familiar, so that is definitely a choice. But blue spells do as well, so, well, it was their choice, but I don't want to criticize it too heavily. Still a really, really cool deck. Love taking a look at it with you guys. But that's going to do it for today's video. Would love to know what you guys think about the decks that we covered today, so definitely let me know in the comment section below. As always, guys, I hope you all are having a wonderful day, and I will see you all next time.